I found my husband's secret phone and discovered he was still talking to his ex. When I confronted him, his ex reached out and revealed even more shocking truths about their relationship. I never thought I'd be writing a post like this, but here I am. My name's Laura, and I've been married to Sean, 34M, for 5 years now. We met at a New Year's Eve party back in 2016, hosted by our mutual friends Alex, 33M, and Ella, 32F. I remember that night so clearly. I was wearing a sparkly blue dress that my mom had gifted me for Christmas, and Sean was in a crisp white shirt that made his blue eyes pop. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for 90s sitcoms and our mutual dislike for the loud EDM music blasting at the party. Sean works as a software engineer at a big tech company, and I'm an elementary school teacher. We both love outdoor activities, hiking, camping, you name it. We even have a golden retriever named Max who joins us on most of our adventures. Our first date was actually a hike in the nearby state park, where Sean packed a picnic lunch complete with my favorite strawberry cheesecake. It was during that hike that I learned about Sean's passion for photography. He kept stopping to capture the beautiful fall foliage, and by the end of the day, I had fallen for both him and his artistic eye. Our relationship moved pretty quickly after that. We started dating officially a few weeks later, and by summer, we were talking about moving in together. I remember feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness when Sean suggested it. I had never lived with a partner before, and the thought of taking such a big step was daunting. But Sean had a way of calming my nerves. He suggested we make a pros and cons list together, and by the time we finished, the pros far outweighed the cons. We found a cozy 2-bedroom apartment with a small balcony where we could grow herbs, and moved in that August. Living together was an adjustment, but a good one. We learned each other's quirks, like how Sean always leaves his socks on the floor next to the bed, or how I can't function in the morning without at least 2 cups of coffee. But we also discovered new things we loved about each other. I found out that Sean was an excellent cook, always experimenting with new recipes. He discovered my talent for interior decorating, as I slowly transformed our apartment into a warm, inviting space. Sean proposed on our 1-year anniversary during a hiking trip to the same state park where we had our first date. He had planned it all perfectly. We reached the summit just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful shades of orange and pink. As I was admiring the view, Sean got down on one knee and pulled out a ring. It was his grandmother's engagement ring, a beautiful vintage piece with a central diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires. I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I could barely get out my yes through the tears. We got married the following summer in Sean's parents' backyard. It was a beautiful, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends and family. I wore a simple lace dress that I had found at a vintage shop, and Sean looked handsome in a navy suit. Our vows were personal and heartfelt. I promised to always be his biggest cheerleader, and he vowed to make me laugh every day, even when life gets tough. Sean comes from a close-knit family. He has 2 younger sisters, Emma, 30F, and Lily, 28F, who I've grown close to over the years. His parents, Linda, 62F, and Robert, 64M, have been happily married for 40 years and have always been incredibly welcoming to me. I remember the first time I met them, I was so nervous I spilled red wine all over their white tablecloth. But instead of getting upset, Linda just laughed it off and said it gave the cloth character. From that moment on, I knew I had found a second family. My own family situation is a bit more complicated. I'm an only child, and my parents divorced when I was 12. It was a messy split, with lots of arguments about money and custody. I lived primarily with my mom, Laura Sr., 58F, who worked 2 jobs to support us. My relationship with my dad, Michael, 60M, became strained after the divorce. We would see each other every other weekend, but our interactions were often awkward and forced. It wasn't until I was in college that we started to rebuild our relationship. My mom passed away 2 years ago after a short battle with cancer. It was a difficult time, and Sean was my rock throughout it all. He took time off work to help me plan the funeral, held me when I cried, and made sure I was eating and taking care of myself when grief threatened to overwhelm me. His unwavering support during that time made me love him even more. Everything seemed perfect in our lives until about 3 months ago. It was a Saturday afternoon and Sean was out golfing with his co-workers, a monthly tradition they had started last year. I decided to use the time to do some spring cleaning and organizing of our shared home office. As I was sorting through one of the desk drawers, I came across an old phone of Sean's. I didn't think much of it at first. We both tend to hold onto old electronics longer than we should. But curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to turn it on. To my surprise, it powered up and wasn't password protected. As I scrolled through it, I noticed recent text messages and call logs. The most frequent contact was someone saved as AM with a heart emoji next to the name. My heart started racing as I opened the text thread. The messages were flirtatious and intimate, discussing inside jokes and reminiscing about shared memories. There were even a few pictures exchanged, though thankfully nothing explicit. The most recent message was from just 2 days ago. I felt like the ground had fallen out from under me. I knew AM had to be Amanda, 33F, Sean's ex-girlfriend from college. They had dated for 3 years and even lived together briefly before breaking up due to long-distance issues when Amanda moved across the country for grad school. Sean had mentioned Amanda a few times over the years. He had always spoken fondly of her, describing their relationship as amicable despite the breakup. He'd said they occasionally kept in touch, maybe exchanging a quick happy birthday message or catching up every now and then. But this was something entirely different. I spent the next few hours going through more messages, my emotions swinging between anger, hurt, and disbelief. I learned that they had been in regular contact for at least the past year, exchanging messages almost daily. They discussed everything from work stress to family drama, with an intimacy that made my stomach churn. There were inside jokes I didn't understand, references to shared experiences from their past, and worst of all, hints at a deep emotional connection that seemed to go beyond mere friendship. When Sean came home that evening, I confronted him about what I'd found. I remember my hands shaking as I held up the phone, asking him to explain. He initially tried to downplay it, saying it was just harmless catching up with an old friend. But when I pressed him about the secret phone and the nature of their conversations, he finally admitted that he and Amanda had been in regular contact for the past year. Sean swore that nothing physical had happened between them and that he loved me. He said he kept it a secret because he knew I might be uncomfortable with their friendship, given their history. He apologized profusely, his eyes pleading with me to understand. He promised to cut off all contact with Amanda if that's what I wanted. But his words felt hollow to me. How could I trust anything he said when he had been lying to me for so long? The man standing in front of me suddenly felt like a stranger. I thought back to all the times he had been on his phone, smiling at the screen. How many of those smiles were because of messages from Amanda? How many times had he been thinking of her when he was with me? I was too upset to have a rational conversation at that point. I packed a bag, my hands trembling as I threw clothes haphazardly into a suitcase. Sean followed me around the house, alternating between apologizing and begging me to stay and talk things through. But I couldn't bear to be in the same space as him. I needed time to process everything. I went to stay with my best friend, Rachel, 31F, for a few days. Rachel and I have been friends since college, and she's been my confidant through all of life's ups and downs. When I showed up at her door with red-rimmed eyes and a suitcase, she didn't ask any questions. She just pulled me into a hug and led me inside. Over the next few days, I poured my heart out to Rachel. She listened patiently, offering tissues and words of comfort. She didn't try to tell me what to do or how to feel. She just provided a safe space for me to process my emotions. Meanwhile, Sean has been calling and texting nonstop, begging for a chance to explain and make things right. Part of me wants to hear him out, to believe that this was just a misunderstanding that we can work through. But another part of me feels like something fundamental has been broken in our relationship. The trust that I thought was unshakable has been shattered. I'm torn about what to do. On one hand, I love Sean and want to believe that he hasn't physically cheated. We've built a life together, and the thought of throwing it all away is heartbreaking. But on the other hand, the secrecy and emotional intimacy of his relationship with Amanda feel like a huge violation of trust. Even if nothing physical happened, isn't emotional cheating just as damaging? I keep thinking back to our wedding day, how happy and in love we were. How did we get from there to here? Was I blind to signs that should have been obvious? Or is this truly out of character for Sean? I'm not sure if I can move past this or if I even want to try. The thought of going back home and pretending everything is normal makes me feel physically ill. But the thought of ending our marriage is equally devastating. I could really use some outside perspective on this situation. Am I overreacting, or is this as big of a deal as it feels to me? Should I give Sean another chance to explain himself, or is this a deal breaker? How do you rebuild trust after something like this? I'm lost and don't know how to proceed. Any advice or similar experiences would be greatly appreciated. I feel like I'm standing at a crossroads, and I don't know which path to take. Update 1, it's been about a month since my last post, and I wanted to update you all on what's been happening. First, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. Reading through the comments helped me gain some clarity and courage to address the situation head-on. After spending a week at Rachel's place, I decided it was time to face the music. I moved back home to have a serious conversation with Sean. The night I returned, we sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless meals and conversations over the years. Now, it felt like a barrier between us. I told Sean that while I appreciated his apology, his actions had severely damaged my trust in him. I made it clear that if we were to have any chance of saving our marriage, we needed to establish complete transparency and he had to cut all ties with Amanda. Sean agreed without hesitation. He deleted Amanda's number from both phones in front of me and even offered to let me change all his passwords. He also suggested we start couples counseling to work through our issues, which I agreed to. For the next few weeks, things were tense but improving. We attended counseling sessions twice a week with Dr. Martinez, a therapist recommended by my friend Olivia who had gone through a similar situation with her husband last year. Dr. Martinez helped us communicate more effectively and start to rebuild the trust between us. Sean made a visible effort to rebuild my trust. He'd check in with me throughout the day, sending sweet messages or funny memes like he used to when we first started dating. He started coming home earlier from work and was overall more attentive and present in our relationship. We even started having regular date nights again, trying new restaurants in town or going for evening walks with Max. One night, about 2 weeks after I'd moved back home, Sean surprised me with a homemade dinner, my favorite lasagna recipe that he'd gotten from my mom years ago. As we sat eating, he reached across the table and took my hand. With tears in his eyes, he told me how sorry he was for hurting me and how committed he was to making our marriage work. It was a moment of vulnerability that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, we could get through this. However, just as I was starting to feel like we were making progress, something happened that shook my world once again. About 3 weeks after our confrontation, I received a Facebook message from Amanda herself. My heart dropped when I saw her name pop up on my screen. In her message, Amanda explained that she felt compelled to reach out to me directly. She said that Sean had told her about our confrontation and that they had agreed to cease all communication. However, she felt guilty keeping certain things from me and believed I deserved to know the full truth. According to Amanda, her relationship with Sean hadn't been purely platonic as he'd led me to believe. She revealed that they had met up in person twice over the past year when Sean was supposedly on business trips. The first time was in Chicago, where Amanda now lives. Sean had told me he was there for a tech conference, but according to Amanda, he had extended his trip by a day to meet up with her. They had dinner at a fancy restaurant and then went for drinks at a rooftop bar. The second meetup was in New York, where Sean had gone for a friend's wedding. Amanda happened to be in town visiting her sister, and they had met up for brunch. While Amanda claimed nothing physical happened beyond a hug, she admitted that there was an emotional connection that went beyond friendship. She said they had often discussed their past relationship and the what-ifs of their lives. Amanda also shared screenshots of some of their recent conversations, which included Sean expressing doubts about our marriage and reminiscing about their time together. In one particularly hurtful message, Sean had written, "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. Life was simpler with you." Reading those words felt like a physical blow. I thought back to all the times Sean had reassured me of his love, all the while harboring these doubts. It made me question every moment of our relationship. Was any of it real? I confronted Sean as soon as he got home from work that day. The look on his face when I mentioned Amanda's name told me everything I needed to know. At first, he tried to deny it, but when I showed him the screenshots from Amanda, he broke down. He admitted to everything, the meetups, the emotional affair, and the doubts he'd been having about our marriage. Sean begged for forgiveness, saying he had made a terrible mistake and that he truly wanted to make our marriage work. He offered to do whatever it took to regain my trust, including cutting off all contact with Amanda permanently and even changing jobs to avoid any potential business trips. But at this point, I don't know if I can ever trust him again. The repeated lies and deception have left me feeling broken and betrayed. It's not just the contact with Amanda, it's the elaborate web of lies he constructed to keep it hidden. Every business trip, every late night at work, every time he was smiling at his phone, I now question all of it. I've moved back to Rachel's place and have asked Sean to give me space while I figure out my next steps. Rachel has been an absolute saint, letting me crash in her spare room indefinitely. She's even taken a few days off work to keep me company and make sure I'm eating and taking care of myself. I'm seriously considering divorce, but the thought of ending our marriage is heartbreaking. We've built a life together, and despite everything, a part of me still loves him. I think about the good times, our wedding day, the trips we've taken together, the quiet evenings at home with Max curled up between us on the couch. It's hard to reconcile those memories with the man who could lie to me so easily. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about what I want for my future. Do I want to try to rebuild a relationship where trust has been so thoroughly broken? Or do I want to start fresh, on my own? The thought of dating again terrifies me, but so does the idea of staying in a marriage where I'm constantly wondering if I'm being lied to. I've also been grappling with feelings of inadequacy. What did Amanda have that I didn't? Was I not emotionally supportive enough? Not interesting enough? I know logically that Sean's actions are a reflection on him, not me, but it's hard not to let those doubts creep in. Any advice or similar experiences would be greatly appreciated. I feel lost and could use some guidance on how to proceed. How do you know when a relationship is worth fighting for, and when it's time to walk away? How do you rebuild trust after such a profound betrayal? I'm struggling to find the answers on my own. Update 2. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I wanted to share what's been happening. After much soul-searching and countless discussions with friends and family, I decided to file for divorce. The decision wasn't easy, and there were moments when I second-guessed myself. I spent many sleepless nights weighing my options, thinking about the life Sean and I had built together and the future we had planned. But ultimately, I realized that the trust between Sean and me had been irreparably broken. His repeated lies and emotional affair with Amanda had created a rift that I couldn't see us overcoming. When I told Sean about my decision, he was devastated. He pleaded for another chance, promising to do whatever it took to save our marriage. He suggested we take a trip together to reconnect, just like we used to do in the early days of our relationship. He even offered to quit his job and move to a different city if that's what it would take to prove his commitment to me. But I stood firm in my decision. The divorce process has been difficult and emotionally draining. We're trying to keep things amicable and are working with a mediator to divide our assets fairly. Thankfully, we don't have children, which has made the separation somewhat less complicated. But deciding what to do with our house, the home we had lovingly furnished together and filled with memories, was heartbreaking. We ultimately decided to sell it and split the proceeds. One of the hardest parts was figuring out what to do about Max. We both love him dearly, and the thought of being separated from him was painful. After much discussion, we agreed on a shared custody arrangement. Max will stay with me during the week and with Sean on weekends. It's not ideal, but it's the best solution we could come up with. One unexpected development during this time was the reaction of Sean's family. I was worried about losing my relationship with them, especially Linda, who had become like a second mother to me. To my surprise, they've been incredibly supportive of my decision. Linda called me a few days after I moved out. I was nervous to answer, afraid of what she might say. But her first words were, "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" She told me that while she loved her son, she was disappointed in his actions and understood why I couldn't continue in the marriage. She shared that she and Robert had gone through a rough patch early in their marriage due to Robert's close friendship with a female coworker. They had managed to work through it, but she understood that every situation is different. She assured me that I would always be part of their family, regardless of my relationship status with Sean. Emma and Lily have also reached out regularly to check on me and offer their support. Emma even came over to Rachel's place one weekend to help me sort through some of the belongings I'd brought from the house. As we were going through old photo albums, she hugged me and said, "You'll always be my sister, no matter what." Their kindness has been a bright spot during this difficult time. As for Amanda, I haven't had any further contact with her since her initial message. Part of me is grateful that she told me the truth, but another part wishes I could just erase her from my memory entirely. I've had to resist the urge to stalk her social media profiles or ask mutual friends about her. I know it won't do me any good to dwell on her or her relationship with Sean. I've started seeing a therapist, Dr. Natalie Chen, to work through my emotions and rebuild my self-esteem. It's been helpful to have a neutral party to talk to about everything that's happened. Dr. Chen has been helping me process my feelings of betrayal and work through the grief of losing the future I thought I would have with Sean. I'm slowly starting to reimagine my life without Sean. I've thrown myself into my work at the elementary school, channeling my energy into creating engaging lessons for my students. Their innocence and enthusiasm have been a welcome distraction from my personal turmoil. I'm also considering pursuing a master's degree in education, something I had put on hold when Sean and I got married. The idea of focusing on my personal growth and career advancement is both exciting and terrifying. While I'm still dealing with feelings of hurt and betrayal, I'm also beginning to feel a sense of hope for the future. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but I'm committed to healing and moving forward. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some final thoughts on this chapter of my life. The divorce was finalized last month. Sitting in the courthouse, watching the judge sign the papers that officially ended our marriage, was a surreal experience. It was a bittersweet moment, relief mixed with sadness for the end of a relationship that had once meant so much to me. Sean and I managed to keep things civil throughout the process, which I'm grateful for. There were moments of tension, especially when it came to dividing up sentimental items, but overall, we both tried to approach the situation with maturity and respect. I've moved into my own apartment, a cozy one-bedroom place closer to the school where I teach. It's been both exciting and scary to live on my own again after so many years. The first few nights were the hardest, the silence felt oppressive, and I found myself missing the sound of Sean's breathing next to me. But gradually, I've been making the space my own. I've painted the walls a soft blue that reminds me of the ocean, hung up artwork that I love, and filled the windowsills with potted herbs. It's starting to feel like home. I started my master's program in education this fall, and it's been a welcome distraction. Balancing work, studies, and my personal life has been challenging, but also invigorating. I'm rediscovering parts of myself that I had neglected during my marriage: my love for learning, my passion for making a difference in children's lives, my enjoyment of quiet evenings spent reading or working on puzzles. I've also joined a support group for divorced women, which meets every other Tuesday evening at a local community center. It's been helpful to connect with others who understand what I'm going through. We share our experiences, offer advice, and sometimes just provide a listening ear. It's comforting to know that I'm not alone in this journey. As for Sean, we've had minimal contact since the divorce was finalized. We still coordinate about Max's care, but our conversations are brief and to the point. I heard through mutual friends that he's been seeing a therapist to work on his issues, which I hope will be beneficial for him in future relationships. I wish him well, even though thinking about him still brings a twinge of pain. Surprisingly, I've maintained a close relationship with Sean's family. Linda still calls me regularly to check in, and I've even met up with Emma and Lily for coffee a few times. Their continued support has meant the world to me. Last month, they invited me to Robert's 65th birthday celebration. I was hesitant to go, knowing Sean would be there, but Linda insisted. It was awkward at first, but being surrounded by their warmth and love reminded me that family isn't always defined by blood or marriage. Looking back, while the discovery of Sean's emotional affair was painful, I'm grateful for the clarity it brought to our relationship. It forced me to confront issues that had been simmering beneath the surface and ultimately led me to make a decision that was best for my well-being. I won't pretend that everything is perfect now. There are still days when I feel angry or sad about how things turned out. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what Sean is doing, or if he ever thinks about me. There are moments when I miss the comfort and familiarity of our life together. But overall, I'm proud of myself for having the courage to walk away from a situation that was no longer serving me. I'm learning to be comfortable with uncertainty. I don't know what the future holds, whether I'll meet someone new, or if I'll choose to embrace life on my own. But for now, I'm focusing on rediscovering who I am outside of my marriage and building a life that brings me joy and fulfillment. To anyone going through a similar situation, I want to say this: trust your instincts, prioritize your own well-being, and don't be afraid to lean on your support system. Healing takes time, but it is possible to come out stronger on the other side. Thank you all for being a part of my journey. Your support and advice have been invaluable, and I'm grateful for this community. Here's to new beginnings and brighter days ahead.